Qualia are the qualitative properties of phenomenal conscious states, the kinds of states being in which there is something it is like to be the subject of that state. In his 2016 essay, Illusionism as a Theory of Consciousness, Keith Frankish defends the view that qualia, so defined, are illusory. We are not phenomenally conscious subjects that we appear to be. There are no phenomenal conscious states, no states instantiating qualia which we might enter. There is nothing it is like to be us, even if there appears to be. Still, qualia are, Frankish says, real as illusions, and important too. So he quines qualia, not the illusion of qualia. Of course, he would not accept this last line. On his view, there are no qualia, the existence and importance of which he could deny. That is, no qualia that are as they appear to be, real qualia for short. Real qualia, which is a term I've introduced, according to Frankish, is the kind of qualia that isn't real. Let us apply this view to sunsets. If something is real as a sunset, it's a sunset. If a sunset is real as an illusion, it's an illusion. That can seem like another way of saying the sunset is not real. In this case, the reality of the sunset would be its unreality. But this is, I think, unnecessarily paradoxical. Typically, an illusion is taken to be something which appears to us to be some way it is not. If qualia are illusory in this sense, they are not what they appear to us to be. But in order for something to be other than what it appears to us to be, it must be and appear to us to be some way. So qualia exist. Here's the argument. Qualia are not what they appear to us to be. In order for something to be other than what it appears to us to be, it must be and appear to us to be some way. Qualia exist. I think this argument is valid, and I think everyone must accept P2. I have said that Frankish accepts P1, so I think he must accept the conclusion. If this is correct, the question at issue in the debate between illusionists and qualia realists is not, do qualia exist, but are qualia what they appear to us to be? Of course, to answer this question, we must answer a prior question. What do qualia appear to us to be? The answer to this question will tell us what qualia would have to be were they the way they appear to us to be. It will tell us what real qualia are like or would be. According to Frankish, real qualia would have to be certain properties of brain states, namely qualitative properties of the brain states we enter when we appear to ourselves to be phenomenally conscious. However, according to Frankish, our brain states never instantiate such properties. According to Frankish, our sense that it is like something to undergo conscious experiences is due to the fact that we systematically misrepresent them as having phenomenal properties. Importantly, Frankish defines conscious experiences as functionally individuated brain states. This, of course, begs the question against substance dualists, as Frankish, I'm sure, would acknowledge. It also begs the question against idealists, who are usually not so much as mentioned in this context. We can set that aside for now. Provided this definition, we can restate Frankish's view. Qualia are properties we misrepresent the brain as instantiating. Were they to be what they appear to be, they would have to be as we represent them to be, namely, at least, instantiated by the brain. So here is Frankish's answer to Q. Qualia appear to be properties of the brain. To wit, qualitative properties of the brain. So according to Frankish, real qualia would be properties of the brain. There is a potential verbal issue here. One way of putting Frankish's view is to say that qualia, qua how they are in themselves, what would be natural to call real qualia, are quasi-phenomenal properties, certain physical properties of the brain which we systematically misrepresent in introspection as qualitative in character. These are akin to Locke's secondary properties qua powers, viz., primary properties of objects with the power to cause within us certain qualitative ideas which in no way resemble their causes. only Frankish would banish the latter altogether. They may exist as properties per se, whatever exactly this comes to, but they are in no way instantiated in the actual world. Naturally, qualia as they are. What are not are qualia qua how they appear to be, viz., certain qualitative properties of conscious experience. Since conscious experiences for Frankish are brain states, the illusionist thesis is that qualia as they appear to be are not properties of the brain. But qualia proper, qualia worthy of the name, being qualitative in character, what I call real qualia would be qualia as they appear to be. This is why Frankish notes that it would be misleading for him to say he does not deny the existence of qualia. I have put this by saying that, according to Frankish, real qualia is the kind of qualia that isn't real. Frankish puts the illusionist strategy for explaining consciousness this way. We deny that the phenomenon is real and focus on explaining the appearance of it. But the illusion, which is not what it appears to be, is the phenomenon as it appears to be. The phenomenon is real, and a phenomenal consciousness realist will also say its appearance is real qua appearance. Indeed, they may insist that this is the relevant phenomenon. Frankish, as noted earlier, states that the illusion is real, and it is natural to think that this can be reworded as saying that the appearance is real. So it can sometimes look like all Frankish is saying is that qualia are not properties of the brain, which of course is something any substance dualist agrees with. What they will disagree with is the claim that this is what they would have to be were they real. In any case, phenomenologically speaking, qualia do not appear to be properties of the brain, and they do appear to be properties of conscious experience. Let us make this vivid. So please stare at the red dot, fixating in the center. Keep staring. Keep staring. Keep staring. So the conscious experience you just had certain properties, certain qualitative properties, or qualia, at least apparently. Did they appear to you to be properties of your brain? I think you must answer that, phenomenologically speaking, no, they did not so appear. I think this point generalizes. I have not yet had a conscious experience whose qualitative properties appeared to me to be properties of my brain. For all that, they might be properties of my brain. In this case, I would be under the illusion that they are not properties of my brain. Even if qualia might be properties of my brain, again, they do not appear to be, whereas they do appear to be properties of my conscious experience. It would appear then that conscious experiences are not brain states. Here is the argument. Qualia do not appear to be properties of the brain. Qualia appear to be properties of conscious experience. Conscious experiences do not appear to be brain states. I think this argument is valid. Moreover, I think its premises are true. Frankish can reject P1 and so reject the conclusion. He must do so if he maintains A. But I think this gets the phenomenology wrong. It could be, on the other hand, that the relevant sense of appears in A is not phenomenological but cognitive, where a cognitive appearance is just what one is strongly inclined to believe to be the case. Consider, per illustration, the Mueller lyre. Phenomenologically, the lines of A and B appear to be of unequal length. However, we are not under the cognitive illusion that the lines are of unequal length. Though we might have once been, we are no longer inclined to believe that the lines are of unequal length. We are familiar with this visual illusion. On this second interpretation of A, it may be rewritten as follows. We are inclined to believe that qualia are properties of the brain. Substance dualists do not believe that qualia are properties of the brain, and most probably have no inclination to believe that they are. On this interpretation of the claim, substance dualists and idealists are not subject to the illusion Frankish believes we are subject to. Technically, then, he does not beg the question against them in defining conscious states or experiences as brain states. He does not so much as address them. Notice, by the way, that a qualia realist could accept Frankish's hypothesis that we misrepresent the brain as instantiating qualitative properties, just as a qualia realist can accept that we misrepresent qualitative properties as being instantiated by objects in the mind external world, a view Frankish calls, on analogy with his inward-looking illusionism, outward-looking illusionism. In fact, qualia realists might deny that there are any spatially located objects at all, brains included, independently of representation, though there might be noumenal correlates. But they might also deny Frankish's view, crucial to his position, that all awareness is representationally mediated. We might, for example, be directly acquainted with the modes of presentation of our representations. This seems to me no more mysterious than the idea that having a representation makes one aware of what it represents. What is mysterious is awareness, and that one is anything at all. One way of obtaining direct acquaintance might be to hypothesize, as Galen Strawson has done, that subject and experience are one. Direct acquaintance, on this view, turns out to be no more nor less mysterious than being. I don't think Frankish sees his illusionism this way. I think that illusionism, as he intends it, is the view that every member of the human species is under the illusion they are phenomenally conscious, just as every member of the human species might be subject to the phenomenological illusion conjured by the Mueller liar. Of course, if that's not true, we can just pick a different illusion. But unless Frankish has the phenomenology wrong, he is wrong about who could be under the illusion. In fact, if the illusion is a cognitive illusion, the situation is worse than that. According to illusionism, qualia are illusory. What that means, again, is that they are not what they appear to be. According to Frankish, as I have interpreted him, they appear to be qualitative properties of the brain. In order to be an illusionist of Frankish's sort, then, one must believe the conjunction of A and B. Qualia are not properties of the brain. There is no contradiction here, so long as the operative sense of appear is phenomenological. Compare, the lines of A and B appear to be of unequal length, but they are of equal length. There is, however, a contradiction if the operative sense of appear is cognitive. If Frankish believes A prime, he presumably believes I prime. I am inclined to believe that qualia are properties of the brain. Suppose I prime, as used by Frankish in a self-report, is true. If one believes P, all the more so, I would think, one is inclined to believe P. Therefore, if Frankish believes B, he is inclined to believe it. But here is the conjunction of what he is inclined to believe. Qualia are properties of the brain, and qualia are not properties of the brain. This is a contradiction. Of course, being inclined to believe P is not tantamount to believing P. I assume that Frankish does not believe C. But I also assume that he is not inclined to believe C, nor, for that matter, inclined to believe he is inclined to believe C. But I do believe that this is what belief in his illusionism would require. It might be objected that, although if one believes P, one is inclined to believe P, one can be inclined to believe P without believing it. Typically, however, in a reflective philosophical context, what happens when one is inclined to believe P and inclined to believe not P, and one comes to believe that they are contradictory, is that one either turns agnostic or comes to believe one and not the other. Typically, believing not P or P then removes any inclination to believe P or not P. Frankish has considered the relevant propositions at length. He believes that qualia are not properties of the brain, but maintains, on the interpretation that the relevant illusion is cognitive, not phenomenological, that he is still inclined to believe that they are. This is unusual. Typically, again, believing not P removes any inclination to believe P one might have had. Frankish may maintain that the relevant illusion is not phenomenological but cognitive, and that this cognitive illusion is hardwired and cognitively impenetrable. This would not overturn the conclusion that one cannot be an illusionist without believing, or at any rate being inclined to believe, a contradiction. But perhaps one can simply accept this. There is, after all, a difference between this contradiction and the usual contradictions that, when pointed out, are usually taken to be decisive reasons for modifying or abandoning a view. One of the conjuncts is cognitively impenetrable. And yet, as an aside, many illusionists, for example, Dennett, one of Frankish's key influences, speak, at least sometimes, as if the mistaken belief, read, cognitive illusion, were just the product of bad philosophy. Still, I would think that if there is an illusion in the offing, the content of this illusion is not that the brain instantiates qualia, but that my conscious experiences do. Frankish, qua theorist of consciousness, can hypothesize that conscious states are brain states, but I don't believe that my current brain state instantiates such and such qualia is a cognitively impenetrable belief hardwired into me, triggered on this occasion of sense. In fact, I don't think that I have this belief at all. I am agnostic. What's more, I don't think that this captures the phenomenology of my experience. Perhaps what is behind Frankish's claim, as I interpret him, that qualia appear to be properties of the brain, is this inference. Qualia appear to be properties of the brain, qualitative properties in particular. Experiences are brain states. Qualia appear to be qualitative properties of brain states. P1 is grounded in phenomenology, how things appear to us, and I believe everyone must accept it. P2 is an expression of Frankish's commitment to physicalism. Again, according to Frankish, all awareness is representationally mediated. It follows on this view that if it appears to us that our experiences instantiate qualia, this is because we, or certain subpersonal mechanisms, represent our experiences to ourselves, us, as instantiating qualia. Provided P2, this may be seen to be tantamount to saying that we, or certain subpersonal mechanisms, represent certain of our brain states as instantiating qualia. So Frankish might reason as follows. Real qualia would be properties of the brain. All properties of the brain are physical properties. Real qualia are not physical properties. Real qualia is the kind of qualia that isn't real. P1 follows from the preceding argument. P2 stems from Frankish's commitment to physicalism, and P3 from an acceptance of the conclusion of certain anti-physicalist arguments, such as the knowledge argument. The conclusion of the first argument might seem to follow by identity elimination, but appearance talk creates an intentional context here, and I think it is clear at any rate that the conclusion is false. Qualia do not appear to be qualitative properties of brain states. Conscious states do not appear to be brain states. Were the argument valid, I think it would provide grounds for rejecting P2. I have endeavored to understand Frankish's illusionism under the assumption that a view labeled, framed, and described in terms of illusions should be understood in terms of illusions. I have considered two possible varieties of illusions, and I have argued that, understood in these ways, the view either gets our phenomenology wrong or else requires belief in a contradiction. Perhaps it will be objected that I have taken talk of illusion too flat-footedly or literally. Perhaps Frankish will readily agree that conscious states do not appear to be brain states. But if the conscious states which fail to have the properties they appear to have are something other than what they appear to be, we are under no illusions, but full-on hallucinating. If we now ask, what do conscious states appear to us to be? Or in other words, what would real conscious states be were they real? It is difficult to find an answer more apt than head slightly lifted, gaze fixed, palms upward, this. It would in fact appear constitutive of conscious states so defined that they be composed of qualia, so that if you remove the qualia, there would be nothing left, not even a bare something which we might misrepresent. It seems important to Frankish that he be able to say that we are conscious, that there are conscious states, that consciousness theorists just have competing views about what these are like. But if Frankish is not to get the phenomenology wrong or embrace an outright contradiction, I believe he ought to go all the way and simply deny that we are conscious. However, going this route, I believe he would have to drop his theory-neutral characterization of conscious states as brain states. He does not deny that these exist, and concede that he has an independent grasp of what is meant by this. The phenomenon, as many real consciousness realists see it. And it would then be very difficult to believe he believes what he might seem to himself to believe. Then again, true belief in some matters beggars belief in the unbelieving. Belief in belief is another matter.